Cornelia Meyer is a CEO at Meyer Resources and specialises in oil and gas market analysis. She's joining us from Bern in Switzerland. Very good to have you back on Al Jazeera. Now, we saw an energy price spike in 2022. That was when Russia invaded Ukraine. Now, that took about a year to drop back to levels that they were at before the invasion. What do you think is going to happen this time?
Well, hello, Bob, and thank you very much for having me on. Well, it will take time. If this when and if this crisis ends, it will take time, because what we have here now is we have more than 9 million barrels a day shut in because in GCC, because there is not enough storage capacity around, so they had to shut in production. It's not a light switch. Some of it will come on quicker, others will take longer. Then you also have 20% of LNG that has to go through the strait, basically shut in, and you had a degrading of Ras Laffan of about 17%. So you have longer term, 3 to 5 years impacts on LNG. Plus, also some of the expansion that was planned was affected. So it will take time for things to normalize themselves.
We heard from Lee Jae-myung, the South Korean president, just commenting earlier. This isn't just about oil and gas, is it? This is all about the industries that rely on those and those byproducts in order for the manufacturing processes. He was saying that essentially the energy industry affects all of us in so many different ways. What do you think is going to be the wider economic impact of this?
Well, he's absolutely right. The president is absolutely right, because if you look at it, polyethylene, polypropylene, even aluminium, because it's so energy intensive, is partly produced within sort of on the other side of the straits and has to go through. And fertilizer, 30% of nitrogen-based fertilizer is produced in GCC and has to go through the straits. So he's absolutely right. All of this will affect us, and this has huge inflationary pressures, which then in turn has an impact on how what's happening to interest rates. We saw all of the major central banks holding steady on interest rates because we don't see where it's going. But if inflation is rising, as it, for instance, they say in Europe, it could be 2.6 to 4.4%. That's well above the 2% benchmark. So they will not be able to sit still. They may have to raise interest rates at some stage. Lastly, and most importantly, fertilizer. That affects food security, especially also in the global south. In the developing countries, because the rich countries, they will be able to handle the inflation in food, and they will be able to get their hands on food supplies, and they will have subsidies and all sorts of measures. But if you're a poorer country in Africa and South Asia, that is really, really very dire.
Now, we have seen countries around the world in a flurry of activity trying to find different sources for oil and gas and their derivatives as a result of particularly the closure or the impact of the Strait of Hormuz. Do you think that we're actually seeing the start of a permanent reshaping of supply routes and alliances as a result of this?
Well, we will have to see where we come out, but there's no way around. 20% of oil and oil products have to go through the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of LNG is produced on the other side of the strait. There is no way around taking 20% of energy and input supply out of the world. So yes, we may see a little bit of edging around the supply routes and so on, but we will in the long run, we will not get around the strait. One thing, though, in terms of energy, in terms of electricity, you will see countries like China and India again doing more on coal. So coal is going to be one of the winners of this fallout.
What do you think the impact is going to be for the Gulf nations that are being affected by this? Because, of course, so much of their trade, not just oil and gas, comes through the Strait of Hormuz.
all of their trade goes through the Strait of Hormuz. And it's not just that, it's also their major nodes in terms of aviation, right? Dubai is #1 in terms of passenger, and I think #11 in terms of freight transport, international freight transport via air. So yes, they will be affected. The question is how quickly can they bounce back? And the question there is how badly is the infrastructure affected? Now, again, it is not a light switch. You know, shutting in an oil field you cannot. It's a complex industrial process, and some of them will come on faster. Others, especially if they're offshore, will take longer. LNG, as I said, it's taken out 17% of Qatar's capability. So that will have an impact. The other question is the business model. You look at UAE, you look at also Saudi with Vision 2030, betting on tourism, betting on being an international hub. I think Saudi will do fine, but the question is how long will the memory of people that left because of the conflict last, and what can governments do to attract investors and people wanting to live there again?
We appreciate you giving us the benefit of your expertise in this. Cornelia Meyer, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed.